Real estate.
Ooh yeah, little real estate. We want more.
We've done it. One take.
I'm Ilana Razbash, and this is Radio Architecture.
Good evening from beautiful Bunurong country. I am broadcasting to you live on Radio Karam from unceded Eastern Kulin Nation land. As always, if you'd like to join the conversation this evening, please text us on 0493 213 831, and also hello again to all the listeners tuning in on YouTube for the live stream as well as online through the Radio Karam player. My conversation partner this evening is dialing in from Gadigal country up in Sydney, Nasim Nasr. Since graduating with a Master of Visual Arts from University of South Australia in 2011, Nasim's art practice has sought to comment upon the transience of cultural identities. With an interest in cultural relationships in contemporary society, her artworks have engaged themes of intercultural dialogue and perspective between the historical and contemporary. Using video, photography, performance, 3D objects, and sound, these works highlight notions of cultural difference as experienced in her past and present homelands between West and East. In March 2024, NAS won Australia's Contemporary Artist Outstanding Contribution Awards from the Arts Minister Tony Burke and Shadow Arts Minister Paul Fletcher at Parliament House in Canberra. NAS's latest work Impulse was presented at the 2023 Adelaide Independent Film Festival, where it won the Best Micro Short Film Award and was in the official selection at the 2023 A Shaded View of Fashion Film Festival Awards in Paris. Nas was also a finalist in this year's Fisher's Ghost Art Awards. Nasim Nas artworks have been exhibited nationally, internationally since 2010, and her works are collected by Art Gallery New South Wales, Sydney, Parliament House Art Collection, Canberra, Jean and Brian Sherman Collections Art Bank, Sydney, and placed in numerous private collections in Australia and worldwide. Welcome to the program, Nasim.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to speak with you. You are such a prolific artist. You're such an amazing artist. You're so curious about so many different things and so many different mediums. And I'm so excited to unpack that all this evening.
Thank you so much. And so exciting to talk about all of that.
And into your world a little bit. But as I do love to on this show, go back to the beginning. And I want to ask about your earliest memory of a building or place.
Building my, you mean in Australia or beginning of the whole?
From the beginning of your life, from the earliest time you remember. Earliest memory of a building or place.
So I think from very, very early on when I was in primary school, I could paint and draw better than other kids. And then I think my art teacher told my father, and my father managed to get me a private tutor. And from there, I kind of knew that's my path. So it was very early on that I was introduced to the art world and a creative world. And not long after, I knew that I want to go to art university. And I'm coming from a medical family background. My father is a medical doctor. And so it was really hard for them to digest that this is it. That's my path.
It would have been a shock.
Yes. And also the future fully supporting me in many levels. But at the same time, it was like, okay, she's very serious now. Going to the art university was never an easy, and it was a commitment to study really hard with the Iran system. So, of course, I was in Tehran Art University, and when I graduated, I realized I'm not allowed to show my artworks because there's a sense of women's hair and female identity in my painting and drawings. and it was just really challenging. And so from there, I questioned the whole system of controlling women, and why nobody challenged the universities for this matter. Because we were allowed to paint and draw men, but we were not very allowed to paint and draw women as a model. So it was always object, landscape, architecture, buildings, and never women. So I challenged a lot of aspects of our universities, and I built an underground activity with a bunch of students, and that was quite stressful. And we were drawing and painting, and we're getting nude and naked, and we start draw each other to learn how to do it. And then that was when my father said, "You need to leave this country. This is just dangerous. That's just something you shouldn't do, and you get into trouble. I'll send you to Australia." And that's, you have to go as far as you can and be in a country of freedom. And I landed in Australia in 2009 to do my master in visual art at the University of South Australia. And then there was when I was entering the whole culture of the difference in the cultures, the contrast between past and present. I was taken to Maslan Beach. That beach is the first historical nude beach in Australia, located in South Australia. And Maslan Beach, I was taken by my friends at the university saying, come, you need to paint and draw. It's your area. It's your heaven. So I stood there and I saw all the signs saying you're not allowed to wear anything. If you wear anything, you'll be fined. So, and that was a clash and flash back to my past, where as a woman, having no freedom of choice, we almost didn't exist. We were just dead people walking in that country. And then, and we did anything out of line, we'll be jailed. And then here I'm in Australia, in land of freedom, on Maslan Beach, in a nude beach. And if I wear anything, I'll get fined. So that was the beginning of my career as an artist in Australia, when I took my camera and I said, I no longer want to paint and draw women, nude women. I just want to make my stories as this challenging past and present, black and white, controlled and freedom, being completely invisible, censored in a culture when it allows you to be seen to that level on a nude beach. So I took a chador, which is a form of covering for women in Iran, that I brought with me from Iran. It was like my grandmother's kind of memory thing with me. And I went on the beach and I did a series of photographs that turned to be one of the most published photographs in my collection. And that was the start. And I'm here today now talking to you about it after all these years.
What an incredible journey. And you have become the voice for so many with no voice, the voice for the voiceless, the voice for those with no opportunity to express, let alone to dream of being an artist.
It was very hard to know all those art students that I left behind in Iran, because it was a one-way ticket. I knew that I would never go back. And just I left all of those people with talents, with incredible passion for art, and they could never show their work. So I'm here on my own, having all these freedom that Australia gives you. And yet I know that there is just, I can't just do what I like and I used to do in the past. It was not happening with my soul. It was the burning desire to voice the challenges that so many are going through. But the new challenge was, it was hard, like about 12, 14 years ago in Australia. It was really hard to convince my audience about it. It was only just since Uprising of Women, Life, Freedom, and my entire audience understood all these years what I've been trying to voice. And what I've just, it came through my photographs. It came through my performances, video art, my light boxes, everything I've done only started making huge sense to my audience from 2 years ago.
Why do you think there was such a block there?
Because we are so isolated and very away from the rest of the world. And I think that's the only reason. As if we were in Europe and we were in like even UK and just even America, because there's a huge connection still between America and Iran politically even. There's a bit of education and understanding and deep digging to the life in Iran, whereas here we're so absorbed in our daily, routine and so isolated. Only last recent years that people actually realizing where geographically, where Iran is, where Iraq is, where Lebanon is. They just started to unpack through media because of the challenges and crises in the world. So 14 years ago, I remember quite often at university, I was told, oh, so you're from Iran, please watch these movies from your country. And then I watch it and it's from Lebanon, and that's nothing to do with Iran.
Oh, no.
Or and they asked me to read this book because the writer is Iranian, and then I'll go there and it's Egyptian, and I was just like, oh my god! So there's so much gap between, the two planets. And so it was just, for me, it was not just being an artist, but also being almost a mentor, educating my audience, where I actually come from, what has happened since 1979, what I went through. And then everyone quite often asks me in the art world that I talk about my topics as a bigger story. And I always say, because it's the kind of work people need to know where it's embedded, where it's coming from exactly. The place of pain, the place of control, the place that really is difficult to exist as a woman. And so it's very important, I think, for me. And I still don't know why I'm doing all of that sometimes. It's just like, I could have been a painter of a nude and naked woman in Australia and just going through that path and become totally a different artist. And I got questioned a lot by my family often, like, why are you doing these sort of things? It can be seen so political. It can put us in danger. It's really not an easy topic. And I kept saying, it's haunting me. And that's just come through and I can't really help it. So
it's like that idea, that idea that the art is within you and it needs to come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was escaping my cultural identity quite often because I removed myself from Iranian community and I really wanted to learn about Australia because I had no clue where I am, what I'm doing in this country. And then the more I removed myself from the whole community of Iranian and escaping my Iranian identity, learning the new one, a new homeland, new culture, the more my work was about my past, which was very interesting in contrast. I made a lot of conscious choices, even not having Iranian food because I just want to try Western food and other cultures because I never had a chance in Iran to try these other cultures. I want to learn about Italian cultures. I want to learn about Greek cultures. I want to learn about Jewish culture. I just wanted to learn and get to absorb because we were not as open into the world to learn these things in Iran. But then I will come in my studio and my entire body of work is about that whole pain and control and suffering I experienced in Iran. And I could not stop it every time. And it's perhaps why it gets published. My work gets published more than it gets exhibited. And that's where I think when the pain from my bone and soul probably connect to a lot of people through visuals.
This idea that when the story becomes very personal, it then expands to become universal.
Absolutely. There was a bit of a resistance even toward collecting my work to start because it was too personal. And, the Australia was all about freedom. My work is all about censorship and controlled and pain and trying to break the habit, trying to break the tradition, trying to talk about my passport journey with the stamps and the whole performances I've done, a lot of writing, erasing from feminist poets. So it was too personal for people to really grasp it. But my market just went global suddenly. And there was a sense there was to the point when I marked the 10 years of my career, it just took off itself without even me wanting to do anything more than what I've done. So I think there's a lot of artists experience that because at the moment you're trying to explore but then you just like, this is it, that's my path, I can't help it, I can't do anything else. And that's just come through the way it's come through my photography, my videos. Yeah, so that's how it's all built to today.
I just love how your truth and your story emerges, and that practice is also multidisciplinary. You're not profiling yourself or putting yourself into the pigeonhole of one particular medium. Was that a conscious decision or a natural curiosity for yourself?
I think it's very natural because there is a majority of my works have been happening through a period that I go through this really pressure and pain and anxiety, and then for that topic, the new body work comes out and that address that issue. And then sometimes photographs for me is becoming an easy and comfortable medium because majority of my works come across as a photograph. But then sometimes, like my light boxes, then I see this light box that is part of my career from beginning to now. These are important historical drums made by women with the hands of women in the history at the time of war to create awareness. So I look at it as a very important object that needs to come to my practice from ancestors. And then the light box, and I put my photographic image behind it and turn it to light box. So the drum and the skin pattern covers and frames my photograph and brings that voice of a woman, importance of a woman in history at the time of war, the informative thing that they invented with their hands, and it's now in the hands of men in concerts throughout Middle East. You don't see a woman in a public places using this drum, but women invented it. So I bring a lot of this voiceless historical thing into the work. So then the drum is a 3D object almost. And then there is a tear collector series, which are glass. And there is no other way for me to bring this body of work to the world unless I reference the glass making women in the 17th centuries of Persia, where again at the time of war they're crying a lot and they have to collect those tears. And after a war ends, they were represented to the family members as a measure of love to the lost members or to the family members who are coming back, so they see how much they are suffering, they've been through. So that was incredible. And women invented that vessel made of glass. So I went to Canberra Glassworks and I said, I need to voice this. I need to bring this to my practice. Doesn't matter if it's not a photograph. It has to be seen. It has to be voiced. It has to come back. But I've enlarged it and I exaggerated it and I've brought the form to a different look.
It's such a beautiful object as well.
Very like a feminine, and the whole, a lot of people look at it as a very female organ or very organic, shapes, and very difficult to make. And yet you wonder, 17th century, it's a time of pressure and crisis and a war between villages and tribes. So the women got together and just invented this vessel, which exists in Metropolitan Museum in America and Victoria Albert in London. You can see the original there. I visited the original, which was incredible and touched me so much that I came to Australia and just produced this body of work, which has been very successful. But then again, I just thought I have to feel the glass. I have to just go through this medium to see what they did in the past and bring it to the surface and in the contemporary world represented. And so it's very that's why the diversity is very naturally. It's a burning desire to connect to what past have women in the past have been able to achieve with limited freedom they've had.
It's like you keep offering us more and more ideas, more and more opportunity to read into the work. It's not just a vessel. It's not just a sculpture. It becomes part of the subject of the photograph. It expands its life and its reach.
Exactly. And it's just somehow... for me, history underlines contemporary, and history underlines what I say, but focused on female power of the history, rather than because I know the majority of Middle Eastern countries, women have no voice and no freedom to express. But then is a reminder that always women had this, powers that today we all forget about, and it can just become part of my body of work. But then, yes, so performance, for example, Women in Shadow performance, I did first time as my graduation show. That was a takeoff of my career in that performance. I remember I had like 400 people attending my performance, plus ABC News, and I was just a graduating student.
That's incredible.
And it was in Adelaide. It's just that little Adelaide have given me that start off to my career, which my past gallery picked me from that performance, and quite a lot of things happened. But that was basically showcasing Australian model, bikini model on the stage wearing the covering of a hijab of a woman of Iran, and then they go through stages when they uncover and become a bikini model again. So it's a loop that you see the full circle of how the transition between one into another, from one culture to another culture. But I also showcase a bit of pain and anxiety and suffering and beauty and ugly and all of that through the performance. And I took off on ABC, and there was no other way to showcase it but a live performance. So it was nothing I couldn't tell that a story through photograph or just a painting. So that's, I think that's how every time I make something, it's so diverse and so different. But also, it just seems like it attracts its audience. I never thought I'd be part of a film festival, and because its film is a different world. But even my small video got invited to participate in this independent film festival, and my video won an award, and it was because of just telling that contrast, the story between the whole black and white, the whole life contrast which exists within each of us, and then it come across in a movement and dance, hiding, revealing, and it's called Impulse. And so that was that. Now I look at it as a film, and I was like, oh, I thought it was video art. And then it's just the work takes off in its own direction.
I definitely had a similar experience engaging with your work. Oh, I thought it was this. Oh, I thought it was that.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is a documentary photo of the artwork of the photo. There's the rhythms that it continues on expanding in its cycle. But I want to pick up on your point that the audience was really essential to that live performance, being in that space and turning that space into a place of connection and togetherness.
Yes, in fact, in my both performances in 2011 at Experimental Art Foundation in Adelaide, and then in 2018 in Powerhouse Museum, I segregated my audience to remind them what Iranian people go through. When you enter airport, you have to go through different checkouts. From the moment you land in Iran, women and men get separated. So your queue of check-in is separated. The bus, you get on the bus, you separated. Women sit at the back, men sit at the front. Everything is divisive. And it becomes a routine that you only just can get that when you come to a free country like Australia. So my performance, I segregated audience, and my audience didn't like it because they were just very confused by, men can't sit next to women. And that was very challenging. And it was part of the whole live performance. And it was captured in the cameras how uncomfortable Australian audience become. And it's been written about quite a lot in Anne Marsh, one of the very important feminist writers. Every time she publishes a book, she really placed my work in her books. It's 3 or 4 of them so far. And that reminds that how much it was important to bring that into my performance for her, even as an audience, to experience it. And then, there was a moment we had even back then, we had few queer people in my audience. They just like no, you can't. And it was like, but that's what you have to do when you enter a country like Iran, when you're totally have to choose your identity of male or female. And that's nothing against you now, but it's like how you experience this when you enter that country. And probably this was incredibly challenging. In fact, they just, after the last 2 years of our movement, Women, Life, Freedom, all of them are writing to me, and they all make sense because now it's all under big exposure through social media, through news, that everything they say in my performance is a reality of that country, but it wasn't exposed 12 years ago to, let's say, Australian media, to the news in Australia. So it was hard for people to really get my point.
You were bringing people into that's just a small, tiny amount of the discomfort that you felt every day before leaving Tehran.
Exactly. And what it is to just be a woman in that country. And, we just keep moving on. And I did another piece, which is also really in major collections of Art Bank and Parliament House. There's one that I'm writing, and a poem by a very important feminist poet, female poet in Iran, who couldn't publish this book. And she unfortunately did a suicide in a very young age. She's from 1960s. And then her name is Furugh Farrokhzad. Her books are now globally published and translated. Her poets are very big fame in Europe and even, studied in universities. So I'm writing that poem that I'm talking about the poem says, I speak from the darkest time of the night, right before sunrise. Mm. So there's a sense of hope and there's a sense of the real darkness. So I'm writing and my sister erasing it. It's a video, 10 minutes video. And then again, she says, life is perhaps a woman walking on the street, carrying a basket every day. And then as I did this incredible moment that came and pushed my heart, and I just wanted to write her poem again and in my work, in my video art. And it was like a performance video. And then I just I watched what happened in Iran over the last 2 years, and how many times I see young girls and teenagers goes to Iran and write these incredible words on the wall against Islamic Republic, and the morning after, the authorities go and erase everything. And I can see my video on the walls in Iran, the video that I've made almost like 10 years ago. So there's a lot of these things that just now it was almost like a provisionary that I created in my body work, and now you see it as a real reality every day in Tehran, in Iran, and it's exposed through news and global stage.
Before we jump into unpack your artwork specifically, I wonder if you might take me into some of your memories, take listeners with you into some of your early memories of Tehran, of the city before you left.
Tehran is a very, very busy city with lots of bad drivers and then crazy drivers and messy. Tehran, again, just like probably most of the cities in the world, has a really upper class north of Tehran where all the nice architectural masterpieces are. And we have our Shah Palace, which is a really lovely place for tourists to go and see, or for us to go, a historical palace. And then you have the south of Tehran, which is quite humble and low-key, and really like people with less fortunate people live there. So there's a very divided city in that way. And there's one street, Valias, which my university was, there, my art university. So that street connected the south of Tehran to the north. So you can actually walk there for 2 hours, which I did quite often, from bottom of it to the end of it. And you can actually see the whole architectures, people way of dressing, people way of life. It goes from one end to another. and within that one line of the street, you can actually experience a whole, pattern change and mindset of people. So it's very fascinating. And I just my memory was walking that street just to absorb the differences, but also how many times I get stopped by authorities saying, "Oh, please just bring your hijab, just keep your hijab correct." And I also have that memory, which wasn't very pleasant and very stressful to escape them and not get to their hand. And I also within, because as women you have very limited freedom to do such things. So you do go through these walks, and you always know that there's any minute you will be challenged. So the university itself, the University of Tehran, is incredible because it's built during Shah Reza Pahlavi, and the architect is really fascinating. And whatever he's done for that country, at least the universities he's built, still is giving today. But then sadly, the Islamic Republic has ruined a lot of it because they're not even helping the architectural things to remain, and they're not looking after the city at all. So then, there wasn't very good memories, to be honest, because I remember when I destroyed a lot of my art, knowing that I'm coming to Australia and I want to see them again. And I'm really regretting that as one of my memories, that I should have kept them, because there were all my nudes and paintings and naked and a lot of drawings that probably now could have, been part of my collection. But it was that sense of, frustration and sadness that this is it, and I'm leaving this country. But then what else do I remember? I really don't think much anymore.
You probably, when you were leaving, you wouldn't have predicted the kind of career you would have in Australia.
I didn't, but when I left, I did go to Malaysia for about 6 months to study English intensively because I wasn't really good at English. And then, so in that 6 months, I got casted for some TV commercial things, and then one led to another TV commercial, and then it started to go to the acting, and I just, for a minute, I thought that could be my path. And then there was time to come to Australia, and I actually pursued a little bit at the beginning of my entering Australia, even though I was an art student at university. But back then, 12 years ago, Adelaide, the modeling agencies were purely looking at the white models, and then I was definitely not going to be casted. And then I said, okay, no, it's art. Don't go there. So it's meant to be art. So I got pushed back to the whole art world. And I think I knew always I would do art, I would create, but I felt like maybe I could have some sidetrack, something on the side. That it just seems like in these years that I've lived here, every time I wanted to go sideways, I get pushed back to this main path of creating art. And
That's beautiful.
So it's meant to be art then.
Your current exhibition in Albury is a public art installation called 33 Beads.
Yes.
It's in a laneway. Do you want to describe that a little bit, and how important it is for you to be able to show your work in public for the public?
Yes, I think public art is very important because it's very accessible and people can see it for free, and there's no limitation as such for time. It's 24 hours, and specifically light boxes, because it's so important. I do a lot of light box in my part of my practice. So being lit all day, the work is lit in all, the light comes through the work. It's a very good element for public to experience. And I've done public art in South Australia in 2011. Adelaide City Council commissioned me for a video on Rundle Mall Street and some light boxes in Blight Street. That was also for months and months, and that gave me such exposure that one exhibition on its own doesn't give that. to people. Just almost like a piece of architecture that you can see and go and have a look at it anytime you like. And you don't have to get a ticket. You don't have to be present from this time to that time. Oh, Saturday is closed. Oh, Monday is closed. And so all of those worrying things and controlling things is not around it. So I think it's a very important thing for artists to have that opportunity. The body of work that is showcasing is 33 beads, and I made that work in 2018. In 2018, I was about, 9 years. I'm in Australia, and I'm dealing with the everyday, with my past and present, and how much of things from past I want to hold on to, and how much of it I want to get rid of. And that was coming through from these praying beads. Again, like a Islamic praying bead that has 33 beads on it, and was given to the hands of Muslims to pray. And it's a very interesting object because it exists in many cultures. It's called rosaries. It's called different names in Greek culture. It exists. But looking at the historical pattern of this object, I see it went from a praying beads to, in the hands of the new generation in Iran, it's like passing anxiety and time. They don't use it to pray. They just hanging to it for passing time and anxiety. Yeah, exactly. So it's lost its meaning through timing and generational gap. And then, majority of times I remember I was in Istanbul and then Art Dubai to show my work in Art Dubai. I see all the men carrying one in their hands in Dubai. And I thought, wow, so this object, it really belongs to men now, because you don't see a woman hanging on the street and carrying one and twirling it and twisting it around. So again, from that moment, that resistant feeling in like, I want to make work that is in the hands of women now. And just, I place myself in the work and I hide myself behind it. But I also show that in the photographs, I wanted to capture that feeling of, am I actually holding on to this object or am I breaking it apart? So there's about 12 images or 13 images in this series, where in each of them, the hands showing tension that is about to break the beads, but also is it holding on to it. So, and then there's the video art that was part of the finalist in Fisher Ghost Award, Blake Art Prize, and the Asia Society Museum in New York, 2021, that I'm actually in that video, I break all the beads. And it's a kind of sense of a relief and sense of that I'm not holding on to this tradition, I'm breaking it apart. And it's in a very meditative way. There's a lot of female hands come and support me in breaking, which is also another thing for all our movements, that we need each other's support and backing up to go through the new pattern, to just enter a new phase. So coming together, you see it in this video, that is really like important part. And the breaking was such pleasure because I love breaking habits. I love challenging. I love doing something that the whole wave of things, not doing it, I go against wave. And so that's something is very profound in this work.
Do you think there's a danger in public art commissions that briefs can be apolitical?
Quite often, because I think depends how the dynamic. I mean, if I place this work in somewhere near a mosque, probably it would be a big challenge. But if it's somewhere quite open in Australia, when public would have this open-mindedness feeling about this is art, this is a way of expression, this is artist expression, so. That could be quite easily seen, which has happened. I've been very lucky so far. It's all good. I mean, apart from my performance in 2011, when it went on ABC News, then it gave access to public to review my work and feel a bit threatened by the idea behind the work. And that, again, we just move on, and the next body of work is something else. And and I've just learned not to be bothered, because I had to make the work. There was no way that I was going to stop it.
That's really amazing to hear your perspective on. And I keep coming back to this point because I think I'm fascinated by it, in the idea that the work has its life and its own will, and it wants to be created. How are the people of Albury receiving it as well?
I think very well. I get emails that, I drive past your work every day going to work, or I just like the fact that at night I'm going to go and get some food. I walk past your light boxes. It's been very good so far. And I think there is a really good gallery there, also in Albury, which is very significant photography museum. So I think the work is being received well. The curators there commenting really well and giving me very good feedback. Again, it's a very it has a narrow audience, the contemporary art. It's very different from architecture world, where you really give everyone access to see your work, whereas this work, it's multi-layered. Everyone takes what they want to take from it. And I guess anything for challenge is good. And I think we need it in Australia more than any other country, because we are very isolated and we are very calm in our way of living, not recent year, but very calm in general. But so it's just good, something that can be a little provocative, can awaken your mind about something, can teach you something. You can learn a little bit extra things through the work. And I think that's a very important thing an artist can do these days.
We certainly can't take those opportunities and the artistic freedoms in Australia for granted.
Exactly, which I haven't stopped talking about it in my public speech, and anywhere I've spoken. I've said I've been very grateful the platform that Australia has given me. Australian people have supported me all the way through. The way they have supported me, it touched my heart, touched my core. It's just motivated me so much more to do more. There's always little noises which you have to learn how to ignore, but then you just keep with the good side. And Australia, if I wasn't in Australia, I would be in a basement of a house in Iran trying to do something that can be seen illegal, which is a normal activity like painting and drawing nude, and never exhibit any single work. I would have never been an artist if I wasn't in Australia. So Australia has been a powerful platform for me, which I'm very grateful every day for it.
To understand oneself as an artist, it's important. Is it important to exhibit? Do you believe that label, that identity, that profession requires, exhibition requires connecting with the public?
I don't know if I've got your question correctly in my mind, but I think, and you can correct me if my answer is not referencing your question, but I think if you're an artist and you're suppressed and your voice is taken from you, it's a suicide. And that's where that feminist poet did the suicide. And we have Sadegh Hedayat again in Persian literature. He did the suicide because you're not able to exchange with your audience. And for any artist, half of the work is internally done as a gift in your heart and mind and soul and core, and then it comes out as an piece of art. The other half is your audience, and be seen and being appreciated or feedback or whatever, and then that bonding you create through your work with the eyes of the audience. So I quite often say, if I had no audience, I would probably go back to Iran and be the miserable artist in the basement of a house trying to do something every day in the fear. So, and that's why dictators really love to suppress and oppress and jail artists around the world, not just Islamic Republic of Iran, but just Communist Party of China, Russia, they do the same thing because they know if they take everything from us, if they take our money, our family, our friends, our country, we go anywhere else and we start creating again. And it comes through the work. If we genuinely making the work, it has to come through the work. It's natural. It's a reaction of human psyche. And so therefore they just would suppress and oppress as much as they can. Therefore, it's this platform to be able to exchange with your audience the way I have done it, the response I've got through this, my second performance in Powerhouse Museum in 2018. We got overbooked about 500 plus. I had all in the escalator of the Powerhouse Museum up to the second floor, up to outside, people were standing, and we just couldn't let a lot of people in. It was beyond, and it was hard to comprehend. But so you would see that, and then you see that how the work get awarded from Jean-Paul Gaultier in Paris for bravery, for something, really strong. And then that's for me, that's it. This is, this is the mission. This is where an artist find its feet and its motivation to continue. So it's very quite important, the audience building and the way people interact.
Do you have some favourite gallery spaces that have helped facilitate that relationship with your audience?
Quite a lot, actually. I mean, my first gallery, Paul Greenaway in Adelaide, for 7 years, I exhibited with him. He really elevated the work in international spaces. I exhibited with Mars Gallery for a year and a half, and they took my work to Photo London, and it was really well received. And there are quite a lot of good experiences. The whole Powerhouse Museum was fabulous. Head on Photo Festival always gives you a really good, sometimes you don't really have to have a space as such. It's just the experience, I think, that whole, and the space is that empty space between me and the experience, that it's sticking to my memory. When you think that you like to work with, I think which experience I liked rather than the space. It's because the mind of the artist is so free from a box, let's say. But I think every space for artists is a little controlling, and it can take from art or it can add to the art. Like my work, when I look at my work in a cinematic theater, it was in Paris, also in Adelaide last year. It just totally gives me a different experience because it's in a huge screen, and when people are just sitting there focusing in a dark space, which as our galleries are white space, and it's like this cubic space when your work is there exposed. So each experience is very unique itself.
Do you have one that you sense you keep chasing?
I really like the experience and the space Tarawara Museum, because I was part of the Tarawara Biennial in 2014, curated by Natalie King and John Mandan. It's called Whisper in My Mask, which was a very important biennial. And I quite liked that museum and the gallery space they gave me. It was a big room. It was lots of videos of mine was shown. So I think that's one of the really good, because the pleasure of the outside, the architectural piece, and then the nature outside, and then you come to this creative minds and souls of an artist that shows there. I think that's one of my favorite spaces. There's quite a lot. I mean, you name it. Art Gallery New South Wales, the new building is quite fascinating with like so much space and window. The Powerhouse Museum is now completely getting renovated, so that what I experienced would never be the same again because it's all changing. I have to go through my exhibition list to remember, actually. You do so much that you just can't track anymore. Like your memory is just wiping out everything. I think as an artist, we're always looking forward to the next, and then our memories don't go back so far. with the spaces we exhibit at.
I want to ask about your work, 40 pages. 40 pages of your passport.
That work, again, that won a People Choice Award at Bowness Art Prize in Melbourne in Monash Gallery, which was incredible because I loved the fact that this work, the importance of this work captured people's to give me the most vote rather than just judges, which is, again, 3 or 4 people that see your work and judge your work, but it just was people choice. So it created a highlight for me, this series. It's based on 40 pages of my passport, Islamic Republic of Iran passport. It's the most difficult passport on earth to travel with. It's very shockingly inhuman when you travel between borders and you share that passport. You get searched through different lines and you get suspicious looks to the eyes of the immigration office, and my name always was more suspicious than others, I guess. I was taken always to a different room. It took 30 minutes or 40 minutes to go through my whole visa, everything. And at the end, I was always fine. And I was always getting the stamp, and I was entering any country that I had to go because of my exhibition. So the first decade of my life in Australia, I was on that passport. Not decade, I think 7 years. And that first 7 years was enough for me to know the pain that comes at border and immigration crossing the countries. That pain has to come through my work, and my face has to tell this story. So I started collecting all the stamps consciously, and I started to visually look at the stamps. Every time the stamp got to the passport, it was like, okay, it's coming to my work. And the collection of all of them is this series where my face goes from completely clear face, and it just gets stamp and burn and burn and burn until I become completely a black face. And like someone you no longer can recognize me through this image. And also there's one image at the end when I only have the Australian passport, because every time I have to come back to Australia, and then I have the Australian passport all on the back of my hand. It almost looks like henna or burn or laser or tattoo, but it's just all Australian stamps that I'm holding. So which is half of my identity now, and the other half is like who I am. And I no longer have to deal with this issue because I'm a citizen of Australia now, and I'm holding Australian passport, and that's just a chapter behind. It's in my past. But the fact that I went through this and I did this, and the only way to tell the story was my face and my eyes, that are just like the pain and the shock that I had to deal with every time at the immigration office. I think it connected to people. And then when I showed this work in Photo London, it was extraordinary how many people walked to me and said, we experienced exactly the same. I'm glad you've made this work. And they had tears in their eyes. They were goosebumps, and their body was reacting. Their skin was reacting to my work. Their cheeks would go so red. They just look at this body work and they just see, I'm so glad you've told this story, because everyone has someone who's gone through this. And I always thought it's me. I always thought, this is me. I'm the one who's going through this. It's my name. But it was the passport of that country. So, and then again, realize, okay, the Afghanistan goes through this. Okay, some Indians go through these. Okay, and my audience started to build up to African go through these. And so we connected through our wounds with this work. And that's quite interesting.
What came out of some of this project, but other projects that for you was really unexpected? Because I sense that perhaps you anticipate a sense of connection from your audience.
Someone came to my London Somerset house last year, and just told me, I was I think it was an very English posh woman, and came and just said to me, even though you've been through so much in your life and it comes across your art practice, but I'm glad you haven't lost your soul through your eyes. We can see your soul. And that was very touching. And I actually ended up crying and I was in tears because she said it really heart to heart and said, like, I'm glad at least your work is saving your soul and your eyes telling us that. And that was a very, very unexpected feedback, which would stay with me for the rest of my life. And I think what I also unexpectedly receive is a lot of tears in my exhibitions, which I never thought my work would do that. Like, majority of my openings, even at Miles Gallery in Melbourne and Paul Greenaway Gallery, in my art fairs internationally, in Paris, when I was showing at this fashion film festival in a cinema, after the film, a lot of French people came with teary eyes and just hugged me and said, we are so happy you've made this work. And when they are in tears for my work, or they are touched the way that I can see their body reaction to my work, it's got unexpected, because I feel something has touched me personally, is touching my audience at the same time. When Powerhouse Museum performance finished, it's in the records of the video of the audience all in tears. And I think there are these things that are very unexpected for me and would always stay with me as something totally unexpected. So there's a lot, but these are very strong from the feedback or from what I get internationally, not just Australia, but also everywhere that work is being shown.
How incredible. Well, I want to ask my last question, and that's what gives you hope?
I think a very hard question, because I think hope is a surviving mechanism. And I think when I look at the sky, there's always hope in looking at the daylight, and this sky is blue everywhere. And, there is a hope that universally we'll come together one day and we realize we're all sharing the same sky, regardless of all the differences and boxes and fights and wars and terrible things that is in the world. I very often look at the sky and then I see there is one roof, and that's the hope that we all come together under this roof.
Hear, 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 hear. Thank you so much,
Thank
Nasim.
you. Thank you so much for having me. I talked a lot.
But thank you for sharing so much of your truth and your story and your soul and your heart and your work with us. I'm sure all the listeners really enjoyed it this evening. I know I did. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for another evening of radio architecture with Ilana Razbash. This live show was broadcast and recorded in the Radio Karim studio on Bunurong Country. You can replay the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and supporting community radio. Take care.
Hey, it's Sam from the Smith & Weston Jury, and you're listening to Radio Karim.